Welcome. I'm Harold Kotler, and I'm privileged to serve that's a first, as the chair of Hebrew College. Before I introduce our three guests, I want to take a minute and explain why Hebrew College is sponsoring this forum. Although it's always important to hear words of wisdom from successful CEOs, why at Hebrew College? Because at Hebrew College we teach Jewish values in all our programs. And we believe that the values that have been seeded in us, not just through family, friends, and educators, but also through our Jewish roots. We, as a people, ask questions, debate, argue, and seek alternative solutions. We change and we find opportunity. We see things differently than they presently are, a trait exemplified by our three guests. Often, many of us are not aware that some of our creativity and inquisitiveness is based on our Jewish traditions. All too often, we, as CEOs, accept our Jewishness as a social and cultural fact, but are not aware of why we are the way we are. That is why Hebrew College exists. Through our curriculum, we teach and help people grow and become more aware. In bringing Jewish CEOs to Hebrew College, we are trying to light a fire of awareness and appreciation. This morning, we'll hear three extraordinary entrepreneurs. David Fialco is co-founder and managing director of General Catalyst. David has raised approximately $3.7 billion in venture funds. He also has time to serve on the board of Facing History and Ourselves and chair of the board of PN Mass Challenge. David has brought Rob Biederman, co-founder of CEO of Catalent. Through software development, they are forcing a new conversation between global enterprises and top talent by educating industries on how to successfully incorporate a freelance model into their operation. Andy Levine founded Duvine in 1996 to share his love for good life with fellow travelers through venture in wine and cycling. He also made time for philanthropic activities on the board of Mass Bike, Director Circle of the ICA, and overseer of the Boston Ballet. Before we begin, Rabbi Sharon Cohen-Anisfeld, Dean of the Rabbinical School of Hebrew College, and named as one of the most influential Jewish leaders in the world, will give a Dvar Torah.
If you're wondering who named me as one of the most influential Jewish leaders, it was my mother several years ago. It's great to see everyone here and to be with you. I have a feeling I'm going to learn a lot this morning. I just have to make a note. Before I came to the rabbinical school 12 years ago, the rabbinical school here 12 years ago, I had worked for 15 years as a Hillel rabbi at Tufts and then Yale and then Harvard. And one of the deepest lessons I learned in those years is how much we in the Jewish community stand to gain and stand to learn by reaching out across disciplines and learning from leaders in other fields. So I'm really happy that this is happening, and I'm delighted to be here. I think that there's a lot of confusion in our culture right now about what constitutes good leadership. And I wanted to suggest that from a Jewish values perspective, the standard by which a leader's success must be measured is fundamentally relational. In other words, what matters most about a leader is his or her capacity to see, to elicit, to inspire, to draw out the very best in others. In the early chapters of the Exodus narrative, the Torah puts forth two sharply contrasting models of leadership. Pharaoh represents one model, absolute in its assertion of power, breathtaking in its arrogance, and life-denying in its rejection of all paradox and ambiguity. Moses represents a fundamentally different model, a model founded on humility, interdependence, partnership, ambiguity, and an affirmation of the sanctity of human life. Strikingly, Moses owes his own life to Pharaoh's daughter, of course, who sees the Hebrew child and quote, draws him forth out of the waters of the Nile. She names him Moshe, explaining, quote, I drew him forth. Literally, I drew him forth from the water. It's this act that constitutes one of the most important elements of true leadership. The act of seeing another human being and drawing him forth. Not only so that he can survive, not only so that he can live, but so that he can bring forth new life. And so it's this very act that gives Moses his name, and it's this act that ultimately defines his life's work, of course. His life's work being to bring the people forth out of Egypt, to bring them out of slavery, not only to survive, but in order to create something new, in order to serve, in order to contribute to a greater purpose. Yesterday we marked the beginning of a new month, a new Hebrew month, the month of Cheshvan. The Mishnah offers an amazing description of how the announcement of the new moon worked in ancient Jerusalem. It began when two witnesses came before the Beit Din and testified that they had seen the first little sliver of the moon. Once their testimony was accepted, a signal was sent out, and a messenger waiting on top of a mountain in Jerusalem would light a bonfire. Another messenger waiting on the next mountaintop would see the light of the first fire and kindle his own, and so on from mountaintop to mountaintop, all the way from Jerusalem to Babylonia. Pirkei Avot, in another part of the Mishnah, teaches, Ezehu chacham haro'eh et hanolad, who is wise? One who sees the nolad, one who sees what's being born. And the word has a double meaning. The nolad is actually the term for that small sliver of the new moon, and it's also the word for a newborn child. When I think about what it means for a leader to have vision, I think about these two things. Can we see beyond what is to what might be? And can we see the sanctity and human potential of the person standing right in front of us? We need leaders with this kind of double vision. We need leaders who can see what others have to offer and help draw them forth. We need leaders who can help us look for the lights that others kindle and add to that light by kindling our own fires. And in doing so, help us expand our capacity to see bonfires on the horizon and slivers of possibility in the sky. Boker Tov, good morning, Chodesh Tov. Wonderful to be with all of you.
Fantastic. All right, gents. First of all, Andy, is this your parents? I don't know how you hatched or launched such a great kid, but I've taken over for you guys, baby. Gentlemen.
Maybe the album calls you.
I guess I'll sit in the middle. So, first of all, can everybody hear us? Here's a microphone. Okay. So first of all, thank you all for being here. I don't know if, is Carl Tanofsky here? No, he's not here. Okay, so thanks, Carl, for inviting me. One thing I should add, so I called Carl a couple days ago and said, how should we dress? Because it's been a long time since the three of us have been in front of such an esteemed group of Jewish people, right? And so Carl gave me some advice, and I hope we did it. He said, it's not how you dress, it's how you act. I said, well, how do I put the two together? And he said, dress British, act Yiddish. And so I hope we did that pretty well, right? Yeah. So I just one quick note. I came here several years ago, and I was brought by a guy who's been my mentor in life, who I really wanted here today. I don't think he's here because he's a little under the weather, and that's Teddy Cutler. And I've been incredibly lucky that my partner and best friend since I've been 8 years old has been Joel, who I'm very blessed about. And Teddy, who all of you know, is a big personality and been an incredible, wonderful mentor to me and brought me here a while ago. And yeah, I missed that he's not here today, but I know all of you know him, and we hope that he's just not feeling under the weather, but he's just a fabulous, great guy, so I can't come in here and not remind myself and thank him for bringing him here. And then the third thing is thank all of you. And when we come to something like this and we talk, I think one of the things that we want to make sure is that you all get something great out of it. And when Carl reached out and said, hey, would I come? I said, we'd love to come. What is the message that you want us to talk about? And he said, what are 2 or 3 great messages? If you have a group of people early in the morning, we're taking a lot of people's time to come here and get here. What are the messages? And I guess I thought of 3 of them that are probably interesting to begin to talk about. One is, and it's so apropos because I talked about Teddy, is the value of mentorship and the value of young people learning from older people, which is such a great Jewish tradition. And it's not that it's not done in other religions or in other cultures, but with the exception maybe of the Indians, who are a big part of our world, the tech world, nobody does it better than Jews. And the reason for that is all about family, and it's all about respect, but it's also about learning. And here we are sitting in a school of theology. You're wondering how I was going to pull all this together, right? What am I doing? Not that. And I didn't take my Ritalin yet because it's before 8:30. It's before 8:30.
And I didn't get the note.
But no, I mean this, and that is that, you know, as we talk about our careers, and then it almost seems like all of this is contrived, but today is a extremely reflective day for me, David, which is the day that I gave the eulogy 13 years ago to one of the greatest guys in my world, who was my mentor and my first boss, who is a guy probably some of you don't know, but it's a guy named Russ Ebker. And Russ Ebker was the co-founder of Berkshire Partners. You probably all know Brad Bloom, but he was Brad and Richard Lubin's first partner. And when I was a 22-year-old kid, is a tremendous fuck up, I might add. Russ was my boss, and I worked for him for 4 or 5 years, and he taught me a lot. And he taught me a lot about respect. He taught me a lot about business, and it began this culture of mentorship in my own life. So one of the things I guess I'd like to say when we come here today and we talk to you all is we love to be able to do whatever we can with this community, your kids, friends of your kids, the young people that you know, you all. How can we be helpful as we as business leaders, you as business leaders, continue this tremendous mitzvah that we have in our community in and around mentorship and love of learning? And that's, I think, one of the messages today. Oh, not bad. Okay.
Pretty good.
The second one is I brought 2 friends of mine, and this represents kind of polarization of thinking. One is a very new entrepreneurial company, Catalent, that is focused around knowledge, around using knowledge in a way totally and radically different than anybody else has, which is I know some, I don't, but somebody knows a lot, I just saw Jonathan Case somewhere, just focus on. Okay, guy knows a lot about the construction world. I know nothing. If I wanted to know something about real estate, maybe I'm lucky enough to pick up the phone and call him and say, hey, teach me about the real estate business. But that's having the benefit of one-on-one relationships. In the business world, we don't always have that. So Rob and his partner, and he'll talk about Catalent in a second, have completely transformed, disrupted the knowledge center of how people get information about specific things, super analytically, fast, efficient, agile, low cost, in a way that's absolutely disruptive to the consulting, the investment world today. But it is about as far to the outside as one could think about how to use technology and knowledge. The second to my left is the exact opposite, which is Andy. And Andy has built a business around love of the most physical things in the world: eating, drinking, biking, and loving. All things that we as people, and certainly us as Jews, attach a huge amount of value to. And Andy has done it in a way of saying, as the world gets more isolated, as more people leave their jobs and sit at home and work in front of their computer and are able to get knowledge out this way, how do they stay connected? They go to Starbucks, they have a cup of coffee. They go here on a Thursday morning and meet other people. Well, the other way is we put more and more value on the physical experiences that we have. And we may not have as much time as we wanted to do those things, but the time that we have, we want to make sure is fantastic. And Andy has built a business around getting people together, having life experiences in super fun ways that are very efficient from a time and experience point of view. And I think that having that kind of combination creates a really good time on a Thursday morning. So what I thought I would do, and then there's two other things, which is Dina here?
No, she's working.
So there's another piece of this which I think is very, if that's very highfalutin, big idea stuff, the more tactical piece is around interpersonal relationships. I'm laying this out so that you guys have a wide field to talk about, which is, as I said, Joel. How many people know Joel? Okay, great. You know, so I am blessed. I have a partner who is smarter, more focused, better judgment than me. And if you spend your life around, including, I guess I have the same thing with Nina, my wife, if you spend your life around wonderfully smart, well-intended people who have great values, it's just going to up your own game. And I've always found that my ability and luck to be able to find those people that have been part of my life, some of whom are in the room today, have allowed me to have a much better life. And Joel is a huge part of that. And in a way, you have the same thing, which is you have a partner who grew up in Dorchester, was the first kid in his family to go to college, went to MIT, brilliant young guy, and the two of you guys have a yin and a yang that's very similar to Joel's and mine. And I think that that's worth talking about, because very often we miss the greatest message in business is about doing something you like and have fun and hopefully enjoy and have rewards out of it, whether they're visceral or economic. But the second thing is the fun you have in the interpersonal part of things, and I think it would be great for you to talk about that. You have a little bit of different. You have been alone. By the way, can we get you married off as well? I mean,
are you offering me still a Mercedes if I get married?
All right, so listen, I could do this in writing. I know that Lou Sassoon is in the room, my lawyer, and I know that he can document this before we leave. But anybody that marries Andy off gets a brand new Mercedes, okay? Now, since we're moving more into the tech world, I guess I can make it a Tesla. Yeah. Mom and Dad, is that cool with you? Yes. I know,
My sister's here too.
Oh, yeah. If you guys don't even have to split it. You just have to make it happen.
I've been busy traveling the world.
But no, jokes aside, you've actually built your business alone, and you've not had a partner. You have, this is just an interesting thing to talk about. And actually, with much prodding by your friends, your girlfriend, who we love and adore, has actually become your business partner. And over the last 6 months, it's obvious that the business has gotten a lot better. First of all, you dress much better. I mean, I don't know where this is from. TJ Maxx, so that's fine. So part of maybe what you want to talk a little bit about is, let's talk about technology, let's talk about the use of technology, let's talk about the experiences you're trying to create for people, experience the jobs you're trying to create, and then what's it like to have partners, what it's like to not have partners, live in the world to do it. So let's start with you.
All right, great. Well, thank you. Thank you, David.
Was that okay?
Great, David. I mean, it's funny. Really, I want to thank Hebrew College for having me here and being on this great board. And I got to
show you thanks. It's just make a nice donation.
Yes, very good. I'll do that. You'll match it?
I'll match it.
Good. But I got an email. I was riding my bike in Italy, and I got an email from David, if you know him. It was basically 3 words, said, "Be here on November 11th." And I just thought it was going to come in here.
Nice Jews talk.
Yes, yes. And I said, anything. When David calls you, you're there. 2 weeks later, I see my name on a pamphlet that I'm even speaking here. So it was really nice. But that's, what he's talking about is being an entrepreneur. To me, it's about showing up and having friends like David. He was right about my business. It's about people and connecting, and definitely I can't say I wouldn't be here today without my parents over there. My father is an entrepreneur. My mother, basically was one. My sister's over there is one, and my parents have given me great Jewish values throughout my life. Just a lot of comedy, fun, love, openness, not afraid, always go for it. And I said in 1992 when I graduated college, I'll never forget it, June 4th, I said, I'm going to France to ride my bike. They said, good luck, don't get hurt, stay out of trouble. And I never looked back, and I haven't come back. I still am on my bicycle riding around the world.
How many of you know what Divine is? Because maybe it's good to yeah. Okay, spend 1 minute and talk.
Oh, good. I
about
have a lot of people to sell. So I'm not Andy Duvine. Actually, everywhere in France, they like, bonjour, Monsieur Duvine, comment ça va? So I'm thinking of changing my name just to Duvine and getting rid of Andy. But it was first Duvin, which means some wine. I landed in Beaune, France, and my concept was to ride bikes and learn all about the Pinot Noir and the Chardonnay. And I'm going through these beautiful villages and tasting this wine. I said, this is a business. If they can get here, this will be magical and amazing. Just what I love to do is, it's about how growing up is entertaining. Having people over, showing them, opening their eyes. There's nothing like, and it's also, I wish I was a playwright. My grandfather, Saul Levine, he was a Yiddish comedian, always entertaining. I just thought when I brought him somewhere new, just when you travel, your eyes open and these magical things happen. But I like doing it on a bicycle. I like getting fitness. I didn't want to sit on a bus. I wanted to work out. I wanted to sweat and learn at the same time. So I stayed in France, and I loved it. I found it was very difficult being a young guy that didn't speak great French, but anyway, it was beautiful. And now we're in 21 countries. I have an office in.
Do you think you had a passion for doing something and engineered a life and vocation around it?
I had a passion.
You started out saying, I want to do this, and I'm going to build a business around that to allow me to do the things I want to do.
Yeah, I mean,
leading question a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, my focus was realistically to have fun and stay out of trouble. I didn't write a business plan. I was looking to ride my bike and pay enough money to pay rent and to take a girl out to dinner. I knew that whatever I did, and when I did it, I was a big entrepreneur at college. I did a lot of odd things. I never made a dime. I didn't think I was going to make any money, but I was going to be able to ride my bike and learn about wine. And in the winters, I lived in St. Moritz, Switzerland. I skied. I just wanted to have fun and take care of people. But
how many people would like to make a large living every year hanging out in France and Italy, riding their bike, drinking wine, and doing it with cool, fun people? Sounds like pretty good? Okay, so this is a good recruiting thing for you.
Yeah, no, but it was just, and then I am a business guy, and I loved it, and I loved growing it, and so now I have 80 guides worldwide. I have a French company in France. I have an office in Montepulciano, Tuscany. We have an office in California where I go on Thursday. We have a sales office in Mexico City and in Brazil. David's one of our best cyclists. And what I like to do as an entrepreneur entrepreneur, and this is what I still love what I do every day. I ride my bike to work, is connecting with people. I have the greatest, I don't call them clients, I call them guests, I call them friends that I work with. I also love my staff. I'll do anything for them. There's 3 things that I focus on daily. I take care of my guests, I take care of my staff, and I take care of my vendors. And that's what I think about.
I'm going to add a fourth. I'm going to add a fourth because you and I met 5 years ago. All right.
I don't have a good
Who knows?
memory.
Maybe 10. Who knows? But I met you because we were at a ballet dinner and you auctioned off
Yeah.
a trip, which was a very Menchie thing to do. Because nobody's ever happy when they buy these things because you wanted it in April and people want to change the date and stuff. And Nina and I bought it. And I said, wow, this is a really amazing thing. And then I met you and I thought, like, wow, what you're doing is really great. And I said, I can help you. And hopefully, our network and the things we've done together have been fantastic. But had you not chosen to be a mensch and to give a trip away and do something philanthropic, it wouldn't have led to our relationship. So talk about some of the values. Because it's one thing to say, yeah, I have fun and I bike and I drink wine. That's great, but that's only half the story. The other half of the story is you really have done a great job in this community. And I think when we talk with a group like this, let's talk about that for a second because that's important.
Yeah, well, again, it comes from
Mom, I'm going to get the best out of him. Don't worry about it.
It comes from the family values. But yes, again, David is the greatest connector in the world. Soon you'll see him. He'll probably be the mayor of Boston, but that's what I hope. No. But it's always been, I love giving back. I've been fortunate to be able to have a good business and a product that people want that actually can help raise money. To me, philanthropy's been great. It's been a part of the Boston Ballet. I've been really committed to the Pan Mass Challenge, not only because it's cycling, but it's an amazing community. It's a great cause.
How many people here how many people ride the PMC? Harold, I know something fantastic. Okay.
You should do it.
And how many people donate? I think that's probably.
Yeah.
So it's an unbelievable thing. I think on Sunday we're going to give a check to the Farber for $47 million, which will be. As anybody that knows Billy Starr, Billy Starr has done an amazing job, and that will bring up. Billy's the founder. I'm just more the zookeeper, but and that'll bring our total to nearly $550 million of net donations to the Farber. Net meaning that 100% of the checks that everybody writes to the PMC go to the Farber, and all the costs of running the event are covered by friends of the board and sponsors, etc. And I think it's very much in line with the things that you do, which is people feel like they're having a really fun time. They're riding a bike, they're cutting fruit, they're doing something with their friends. They don't feel the burden, but 5,800 or this year 6,100 people riding, producing $47 million worth of net contribution at an average check size of around $75 or $80. So nobody feels like they're being really put out by the fundraising. There's a few people that raise millions of dollars, but for the most part, the average donation, the average rider's contribution, meaning money that they've raised from their friends, is approximately $9,000. So it's the power of compounding. The first year we did it, we raised $10,000, and this year $47 million. And it's the power of compounding, starting with 10 people riding to 6,200. But it's also the power of a network, which is the power of getting people to feel good. And two of the things that have certainly helped, unfortunately, are the rise of cancer, which if I asked everybody in the room who's been touched by cancer in their family, everybody put their hand up, so I don't need to do that. And then the second thing is the power of community, which Billy has done a better than great job of creating, of getting people to feel that they're part of something really good. So let's move to, so that's PMC. You're going to ride this year because you're young and strong. Let's talk about you for a second. You didn't come from Boston. You talk about a little bit about your background, what led you to do this. Talk about your relationship with Patrick, which is incredible, and talk about being one of the best young entrepreneurial businesses in the United States.
David, just to interrupt, just as a reminder, we're going to have a Q&A section. So there's pencils and paper on your table.
Sure.
Please feel free to write any questions that you might have and pick them up.
And we want to be done by 9. Is that fair?
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. If you told Rabbi David Greenberg, after a couple of weeks of Hebrew school in 1996, that I would be on the stage 20 years later at a place called Hebrew College. He would not have found you very
We'll get a
credible.
photo. We'll get a photo.
I did not light it up at the beginning of Sunday school. But anyway, thanks for having me. My family's from Boston. My grandfather's actually from Dorchester, but I was raised about 200 miles southwest in a city called New York. Went to Princeton.
You're doing so well, too, before you said that.
And, after a couple semesters in the engineering department, was sort of politely requested to transfer to an easier department. And so I ended up in econ. And then just because I didn't know what to do, and it was 2006, I went to Goldman out of college because
Small detail, you were the president of the student class at Princeton. Not a role a lot of Jewish people do. So.
And then had a great time at Goldman, came up here to work at Bain Capital, went to HBS, was planning on going back to Bain Capital. I'd actually signed an offer committing to do so. They were paying for HBS. And then a couple of friends and I started a company which at that point was called Hourly Nerd. And the purpose of Hourly Nerd was to democratize access to great talent, to take an industry that Bain, McKinsey, BCG, and others, apologies if any of you work there, had effectively locked out 99% of the possible buyers of knowledge, right? They'd created a pricing structure and an operational delivery mechanism that made it nearly impossible for all but maybe a few thousand people to benefit from their services. And so that was the first belief, was that on the demand side, the consulting industry didn't work. The second was that on the supply side, it wasn't great either. So my girlfriend is a McKinsey consultant. She travels. She wakes up at 4 o'clock on Monday morning. And by extension, I wake up at 4 o'clock every Monday morning. She flies to Tennessee. She's there the entire week. She comes back at midnight on Thursday. She's part of a team of 9. They cost $1 million a month. And the client really benefits specifically from her presence. But you can't unlock her from the team. And so this client has been forced to purchase what to date has been a $8 million consulting project just to get at one person's knowledge of how nurses should be staffed at a hospital. And that's crazy, right? In an era where you have smartphone and Dropbox and Skype and Google Hangouts and free storage and free video conferencing, the fact that the consulting industry works the same way it did in 1956 doesn't make any sense. And so my co-founders and I set out to change that. Originally, it wasn't quite as highfalutin as it is these days. At the end of class every day in February, we would leave Harvard Business School and walk across the bridge over to Mass Ave and start trying to peddle projects to delis and laundromats and dry cleaners. And you can imagine the reception that a bunch of HBS guys in blazers who'd worked at Bain Capital got when they went into, probably very recent immigrants running a deli at very thin margin and saying, "Hey, we're from Harvard Business School and we're here to help." So not a great line. And I think it connects back to Judaism in an interesting way. So after those first couple weeks, to make a long story short, we went to about 500 places and sold about nothing. We went back 5 times to collect a $50 check from a florist who never gave it to us in the end. And we had just this irrational faith that what we were doing was correct, that the industry was so broken, and that even if that florist turned us down and never paid us, another one was going to give it to us. And I think in many ways, if you look at the better part of the last 6,000 years for the Jews, there's been a lot of florists who didn't want to give you a check, right? More often than not in our history as a people, we've faced oppression, genocide, persecution, and just forged on, right? Even in light of data that would have suggested that it wasn't probably the right idea to do so. And both of my co-founders are Irish Catholics, and I think we sort of unite along the same lines. It's probably no surprise that you see a lot of immigrants start companies. Not a lot of people with a last name Johnson, or Harrington are starting companies. You see people who look at the world and say they want to change it in a way that may seem a little crazy and may seem a little irrational. And so it's been an incredible journey to the relationship with my co-founder point. I was unfortunately in March 2015, in the space of 8 days, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then just shortly after that, my sister was almost killed in a boat crash, in a very high-speed boat crash, and flew to Miami, where the crash had happened, and felt incredibly alone, both literally because my parents were stuck in New York and couldn't get out because of a snowstorm, but also, we have a very small family. The Jews don't tend to have 9 siblings, and so I think my entire extended family is like 7 or 8 people, none of whom could get to Florida, and it was really my co-founders who hopped on a plane and came to Miami and ran the business out of the neuro ICU waiting room for 3 weeks, and were the most incredible source of support for my mom and dad, who were going through the most gut-wrenching moment of their lives. And it was that special moment where we were obviously very, very close at that point. We'd known each other for 3 years at that point. But you really learn in moments like that. By the way, my sister she was in a coma for 6 weeks. She had a year-long rehabilitation and now is like completely fine, which is exciting, as is my mom. But I think, you go through a business and there's ups and downs. We've been very lucky to have primarily ups, but you really find out in moments like that people's true character. And I have to say that my family and I were blown away. Wouldn't even begin to describe the half of it. And so, I think more than anything else, we built a great company. We do fantastic work for GE and Pfizer and Fidelity and another 13% of the Fortune 1000. More important, though, is the relationships we've made with each other, and then the 96 people at our company who now have full-time employment, have financed houses off of their salary. 5 of them have left to go to high-quality business schools, for better or worse. And the 32,000 nerds on our platform who are working and living in a completely different way that none of them had ever thought was possible. Just to drill down on those people, the value proposition of these consulting firms and investment banks is difficult if you're somebody who wants to have a family, if you have hobbies, if you want flexibility, if you want to start a company. And for a long time, those people really had no option. It was basically deal with the McKinsey universe or drop out. And you saw that particularly perniciously with caregivers, who in our society tend to be female, where they were basically given a choice of, full-time employment or full-time non-employment. And I think we've facilitated people doing an 80-20 or 70-30 that allows them to fit work into the spaces created by their life, rather than the historical paradigm, which has been far more fitting life into the places where work isn't.
All right, so let's take a few things that you a few things that you just said. One is the change in the business world, where folks who they may be home caregivers, they may be wanting to live in different places, have not had to drop out of the high end of the business world and can still work at a high level and do the things that they do, which is tremendously powerful in a world where we're trying to encourage people to live lives that are full, and not everybody can get on a plane at 4 a.m. on a morning. And think of how debilitating that would be if your girlfriend was your wife and your wife had 3 kids and you or her were on the road for 5 days a week. That would be a difficult transition. The second thing, which was really powerful, was on Monday night, we had a dinner. I call them the nerds, Catalent, maybe because the name of our firm is Catalyst. But we had a dinner at the new GE headquarters for the nerds, and the dinner was sponsored by Jeff Immelt, who's the CEO of GE, and GE just moved to Boston, which is a huge win for the city. And he decided to have a dinner for the one company in Boston that he thought would be transformative to the global thinking about work and the new work economy, the gig economy, the shared economy, any other cliche you want to use, and what one company represented to GE, and that was Catalent. So being Rob's investor and friend and board member, I said I would come, and there were 14 people, 18 people, 20 people, and what I realized is Jeff Immelt gets up and says, I want to thank you all, and he had brought the CEOs of the number 2 people from Pfizer and Verizon and IBM and Salesforce and CVS and all these major companies throughout the United States, and put a cabal in the room together and said, this is the company that is going to change the way Americans work. and he gets up and says, I have 395,000 employees, and I am telling all of our employees to learn from Catalent how do we use knowledge and technology in a more efficient way. And it dawned upon me, holy cow, 2 years ago when we met these kids, they were at HBS trying to collect money from the florist. And here they are with the biggest leaders in the United States business world being, kind of touted as the future of work. It was powerful. And it was unbelievably awe-inspiring to see how this world is going to play out. I would also say it's very impressive that the CEO of GE understands this, and I think it shows the agility by which, the world is moving in the tech world. I mean, we're all overwhelmed by technology. I appreciate it that this is one of the few times that the three of us could ever speak to a group where everybody didn't have their iPhone in front of them or their iPad, or now the easiest way to cheat is you have an iWatch, and people think you're actually looking at them and you're actually looking at your iWatch, trying to get the latest message. But the reality is technology is changing this world, and we got to continue to make it work better for all of us and not be a burden for all of us. And it's cut into family time and family values, the quality of people's lives, which is why people love to go on bike trips, because they 6 hours forward of their workday because of the time change. And when you're on a bicycle, you're drinking wine, you're not looking at your iWatch or iPhone or other things like that. But the message should be that, and I want you to talk about this for a second, now that we've talked about partnerships, we've talked about entrepreneurship. In your mind, if you were to think forward and reason backward, how can we continue to think of the evolution of technology, improving the quality of our access? And some of you, maybe access to healthcare and maybe access to, but how do you think this changes our world?
Sure. So I'll talk about it specifically how we see it playing out in talent, and then hopefully try to draw some conclusions from there. If you think about the life of the average American office worker today, and then think about what they were doing 50 years ago. If you just videotape their day, they wake up, they go to an office building, more than likely they work for one company. They probably work for that company 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, 20, 30 years, and then they retire. And that doesn't look any different than it did 50 years ago.
How many people here have worked for 2 companies or less their entire life? Okay. 50 years ago, if you swap in a typewriter for their computer and a landline for their office phone or their cell phone, basically the same thing. 100 years before that, they're in a factory, and so they have a machine instead of a laptop or a machine instead of a typewriter, but no fundamental change in how work is organized in a couple hundred years. And if you think about all of the exogenous technological change, bandwidth everywhere, remote work, cheap video conferencing, cheap file storing, and then an algorithm like the one that we've developed that allows you to match economic opportunity and talent in real time using data, that should lead to a work world that is far more dynamic and far more serendipitous than the current one where you just need people in a physical space to tell them to do things. And if you think about the many implications of that, one is think about what drives promotion at big companies. For better or worse, if you want to get ahead at a big company, having a great personality is important. Being tall is important. Statistically, the data would show that being a white male inures to your benefit. And none of the things I just mentioned have anything to do with job performance, right? And so historically, the way that performance and review mechanisms work, once or twice a year, somebody sits down and says, do I like Jim? I like Jim. Jim's a top performer. And that's sadly at most American large companies, that's how it works. And so what our platform does is think about the Uber rating mechanism, the Airbnb rating mechanism, Amazon Marketplace. After each project, you're rigorously rated and reviewed both ways. So how is Dave as a manager? How is Jim as a subordinate? And then your professional resume consists not just of the brands where you've worked and your length of time, but how you've actually performed on real projects. And how much more relevant is that to understanding who's good than figuring out who's charismatic at the water cooler, right? And so you could believe that if we're successful, you'll see economic opportunity far more broadly
distributed, and then also distributed across place and time. And so today, if you want to be the CEO of GE, you need to work there for 30 or 35 years. You need to come in and punch the clock every day. You probably need to move 10 times. Jeff told us the other night he's had 10 moves at GE. Obviously not a great thing from a family perspective. What if instead you could live wherever you wanted, work however you wanted, whenever you wanted, and the only grading mechanism was the quality of your thoughts and insights, and that's what actually pushed you ahead. Think of how much more fair that is, and then just from a total societal output perspective, think of how much more efficiently supply and demand for knowledge would be matched if it all happens with data, right? If you take out the human biases. We've done some pretty interesting experiments with how our clients pick, and we found that a lot of the things that you would have expected would be really important on our platform. 32,000 people, tons of Harvard MBAs floating around, lots of great brand names on the employment side. The thing that determines who the client will pick to do the engagement is their ratings and reviews from previous engagements. Right? And that seems right, we think. 96% of the time, that is the right way to pick, is how well have they done on this in the past.
We're going to go back to that. Well, let's shift it's awesome, huh? I mean, an amazing business model. So, 2 weeks ago, now we're going to shift and we're going to talk about the value of live activity. 2 weeks ago, Jill and I had the honor and pleasure of hosting the Forbes Under 30 event here in Boston, which I don't know how many of you went to it, but it dawned upon us about 9 months ago, over Christmas over Hanukkah of 2015, how badly Boston had been depleted of its business opportunities. And one of my partners had left to become the governor, Charlie Baker, and the governor had said, how are we going to take Boston back? And one of the things I realized is we have this tremendous resource here in Boston, which is not only the Hebrew College, but also the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of college kids here who are vibrant and alive. But they were leaving. They were going to New York because it's more fun for young people, or California. And we said, how do we stem the tide? And one of the things is we put a lot of firepower, leaders in our community, to bring GE here, which worked out very well. And then the second thing, it dawned upon us, is why is the Forbes Under 30 in New York or Philadelphia? Why isn't it here in Boston? So 2 weeks ago, we hosted it here. It was an amazing success. Last year, there were 1,300 people at the event, under 30 in Philadelphia. This year, we had 7,000, which is amazing. And there were over 5 billion social impressions that came out of it. And we had great entrepreneurs, CEOs. We had all the leaders in Boston. We had tons of people from Hollywood and all over the world, entrepreneurs. But most importantly, the community of Boston, in particular Harvard Business School, MIT, BC, Babson, Northeastern, Berkeley College, Emerson, the mayor and the governor, all of us got together one day in a cold January at the Parkman House and said, how do we as a group of leaders in Boston make Boston again the capital of young entrepreneur firepower and the energy and enthusiasm that goes with it to be able to launch businesses here that frankly have not happened here in over a decade. There's been a lot of good companies started here, but we haven't had the same amount of businesses launched in Boston in the tech world as we had in other places. So it's just great to see you all being part of that new revolution that's coming. GE acknowledging your leadership, GE being here, the Forbes group coming, which was amazing. And so the real answer is that we as community leaders can come together and as business leaders and change things and make stuff happen very, very quickly, which is a wonderful thing. And I think all of us should feel the empowerment to be able to do that and the results to do it. The second piece of this, which kind of leads to you, is having the Forbes event here and seeing the power of convening people in one place for 3 days, in particular young, creative, dynamic people, was amazing. So talk a little bit, I mean, we've talked about the wine and the food and the love. Talk about how important it is that we stay connected through live and really interpersonal, relationship-driven experiences.
Yes, I mean, listen, I love technology like anyone else, but where I find the magic is when you're connecting with real people, when you're off in the Tuscan countryside, or right now we have a trip in Uruguay going on today, and we're connecting with a local artist there, and we have the same thing going on in Peru, and when you do put your phone down, and that stuff is when you get back to why we're living, when you're meeting a local artist or a winemaker, or sitting around a table and just talking to someone. David's great at that. David creates dinners where he always brings people together, and you just share information. We do that on our tours. It's so great to. I have the technology on. You're looking at if you have Garmin's or Strava or these things on your phone, but when you put that all away and you just get back to what life is about, love and real healthy food. My mantra is, life is about health and happiness. You have those two things, you can do anything. And so, and by living this health and happiness life, you create these wonderful relationships, and you create ideas. And to me, I've grown my business not by sitting in a boardroom or in Cambridge. It's been out on the road and meeting people, people like David or Alm. We have thousands and thousands of customers, and I'm always around and asking them ideas, and that's how you grow a business. To me, it's getting back to what's real, and building relationships, and having honest.
Summary point here.
Yeah.
Technology will create great businesses, the knowledge economy, the ability to get what you want, when you want, where you want it, and get precision information. Fabulous. We will never, ever lose our love and affection for being with people, and that combination of this plus this maybe equals a good discussion for all of you. So maybe at that we can